A lot of times things go wrong in our lives and we just wonder why. And I spoke about it a couple of shows ago, but I want to address that again today. When it rains, it starts pouring and pouring harder. And how do you handle with that? You know, there are things that could happen. A loved one gets very seriously ill, or someone dies in a car accident, or stuff happens. And how do you overcome, and how did you work through those tragedies in your life when it seems so hopeless and so frustrating? With me is a special guest. He's an author and a speaker today. His name is Solomon Gee, and he experienced a lot in his life which I would call tragedies. His wife died from colon cancer after 23 years, and also his second wife committed suicide only after they were married for 3 months. How did he overcome, and how can you find out some things from him that can help you in your situation? Solomon, welcome.
Thank you, Barb. Nice to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. Now you're an author with a book.
Yes.
So that is exciting. And you know, I just found out, grew up in San Francisco, Chinatown.
Right.
What was that like?
Oh, it was fun. As a kid, it was fun because it's not as crowded as it is today. And so you get to play in the playgrounds and the back alleys and so forth, and you're fairly safe.
Now, what I understand is that you said you just went to a Chinese school, but didn't you go to a Christian school, and yet your parents were not Christian?
It was a Catholic school. Yeah, it was a Catholic school, and they had Chinese classes inside there as well. So it was 2 in 1.
Okay,
yeah.
Now, why, if you are not a Catholic or not a Christian, why did your parents send you to a school like that?
Well, they wanted to make sure that I was going to be safe and going to grow up good, So by giving us biblical names, for example, and also sending us to a Catholic school, because that was the biggest one in Chinatown at the time, and sending us to church and so forth. They figured, well, keep him off the streets. He'll be fine. He'll be good.
So that was kind of a good luck thing.
Yeah, good luck. It's not superstitious, but yeah, it's a good luck thing.
Yeah. So, and then, at that moment, you ended up talking to your sports coach, but I thought sports and really hanging out with friends was not popular with your family or with your culture.
Well, my parents, they wanted me after school just come straight home and get a little snack and then hit the books. And I couldn't join any sports teams. I couldn't do anything of the sort. And so how I got into sports was really through the neighborhood kids.
Okay.
And then we found a church that eventually, that's how I met my coach. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, your coach said something to you that made a huge impact on you. What was that?
He asked me, where would you go when you die?
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you respond to that?
Well, I said, I would like to go to heaven because of my Catholic background and so forth. I knew there was a heaven and a hell, and I just didn't know how to get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you like to go to heaven, because a lot of people, I wonder if they say, I'm a good person, I haven't really hurt anybody, I deserve, because I am good, to go to heaven. What would you say to a person like that?
Well, I would say that good works is not going to get you in. You could be a very good person, but not have the relationship of Jesus in your heart. And when you don't have that, it's kind of like showing up at the door, and you know where the latest hot nightclub is, and you know where it is, but your name is not on that list. You're not getting in. So you know how to get to the door, but you can't get in the door.
In there. And what is the secret to get through the door?
Well, what the coach shared with me is the fact, he said you have to just pray, just ask Jesus to forgive your sins and to cleanse your heart of all misery and so forth, and then to ask him to come into your life.
But Solomon, isn't that too simple?
Yes.
Isn't that kind of too easy? If I would be a person sitting out there, I said, yeah, right. Why? Why would somebody die for me and just give it over to me?
Right.
How would you respond to that?
Well, it's actually a very good question, but I would say, sometimes easy things in life are free.
Yeah.
And it's just like breathing. You can't see the air, but you breathe.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing. Just knowing that Jesus is out there. You either have the faith that he's out there or he's not.
Yeah. And I think the solution to that is also love. It's just, he loved us so much that he did it. I think it was nuts, but he loved us so much that he would actually go to the ultimate and do anything. So that made you thinking at the time. Your coach actually threw a question at you, and that must have done something to your, I think a guy says his gut. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. But anyways, it does something with them. And did that make you think, or did you instantly say, well, Jesus, I want to get to know you? What was that process?
Well, I'm a very spontaneous person. And so when I know something is good, I go for it.
Yeah.
And when he explained all that to me, I realized, oh, this is it. Because I read about that when I was going through, other churches and so forth, but nobody's ever brought me to where he was bringing me to.
Yeah.
And so when he did that, that was when I said, this is it. This is the answer. And so I just prayed with him right then and there. So there was no second guessing. It was just, I knew that was the right thing to do.
That was the right thing. So you get excited, you get involved more than ever, probably if you're that kind of an impulsive person, like I am too. You're all thrilled. You go home, you tell to your parents, I'm excited, I'm going to go on tour, I'm going to be a Jesus freak. How did that go over?
Well, first of all, my mom thought I was being brainwashed.
Yeah.
And my dad said, well, he's going on tour. We can never afford to send him on our own, so let him go. If the church is going to help him go, it would be great to just explore a new side of the world.
Yeah. So you left?
I left.
Your mom said you cannot come back?
Right. Well, she didn't say it to me directly, but my mom and dad were arguing upstairs, and we were in a San Francisco home, and the air vents were those old types, and when you yell, you can hear it all around the house. And so at one point, my mother said, well, if he's going to go, he may as well not come home. And that's what I heard loud and clear.
That was really clear.
Right.
And then you went on tour, and you did not know what was coming to you when you got back.
No.
And then yet so much else happened after that. Solomon, keep that thought right now.
Okay.
We will be right back.
Hi, I'm Bob Mees. I'm affiliated with the Barb Marshall Show, a production of Thriving in Christ Ministries. And if you haven't had an opportunity to watch the show in the past, I really encourage you to take some time to do it. You can watch her older shows on barbtv.org, or you can tune in on cable, or you can watch it on your cell phone. It's just a great show if you're struggling with, what's your purpose in life?
With me is Solomon G, and we are talking about what happens when things in life go wrong and how to overcome and work through that. So Solomon, here you are on that trip, you're coming back home, no money. Were you nervous and no place to go because your mom said don't come back?
Oh yeah, the anxieties were high. And so on the 16-hour flight home, I was praying. I said, well, okay, God, I did my part. What are you going to do? I don't have a place to live. I don't have a job to come back to. I don't have any savings. Yet I served you. So how about a little bit, coming back to me? And then that's when we were traveling with my pastor.
That's funny. You're bargaining with God.
Well, I was trying not to, but so sometimes when you're in a desperate situation, people say, God, if you only save me, I will do this for you, right?
And he did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah, he provided me a place to live. I got my job back, and I was able to build back up my savings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then you lived the American dream, and I think the American dream is a happy marriage, finances, no worries, kids, and you had all that. You're married now for 23 years. It all goes great, and then you fall into this huge black hole. Your wife is stage 4 colon cancer. What did that do to you?
Well, that really changed how I looked at life. I was taking it for granted because everything came,
Easy?
Yeah, well, not totally easy, but fairly easy, but I worked hard, to get to where I was. And when that happened, it was like, okay, we had just made plans to where we're going to live, when the kids all grown and so forth. And we were just having fun with that. And then all of a sudden this happens. And I said, oh, this isn't good. I mean, stage 4 of all things. And so that's when everything just shifted. I mean, nothing else mattered at that moment, right? It was just, how do I help my wife get through this? And how do I help myself, without falling apart? Because while she was suffering, I had to take care of everything else. You know, what was used to be a two-person job in the household now became just me.
Then at that point, you're maxed. You're just maxed. And your emotions, you can't even deal with them because of taking care of it. I assume, because I've never been in your shoes. And here you are. And if I would have been you, I would have begged God for mercy. I would have done prayer meetings and healing. And did you do any of that?
Oh yes, we did. We attended like a couple of churches where there was faith healings and so forth, and we did all that. We had pastors come over, and they anointed us and all that. And so there was a lot of that going on. But I think in the end, it comes down to my Christianity at that point. I've been a Christian for quite a few years by then, and at that point, I realized, okay, God, I know we're doing these human things, right? But ultimately, it's going to be your purpose. And what is your purpose? We didn't know at the time what the purpose was really going to be. But it was until one day she was getting prepped for surgery, and then her mother came out to visit her, and her brothers and sisters were downstairs with me, and so it was just that moment where
it was just, I have goosebumps all over just listening to you.
Right, it was just her and her mom, and that was when she shared the gospel with her. And what we could not do in 25 years, it all happened right then in that moment, and she accepted the Lord. And when I look back on all that, I said, "Gosh, took all that to bring her to Lord," But and we were just an instrument,
That is so hard, though. You see the purpose, you see the answers, and yet you lose what is most dearest to you at the same time. She actually died. And, guys like to fix things, and you couldn't fix this. So how do you move on?
Well, I first had to accept the fact that the loss was there. And then it was, and again, being my personality, I said, okay, now that that's happened, what do I need to do to move on? I just put the stake in the ground and said, I have to move on. If I continue to sulk and blame and so forth, I'm just going to be totally miserable for myself and for my kids. And so I said, no, the kids are now important, and I need to, well, they've always been important, but I mean, ever so now. And I said, I need to always make sure that they are being taken care of, by the other parent, me.
That was you. Now, I have heard that people can say the most wrong things when a loved one dies. So can you tell me a couple of things what people should not say?
Well, one is basically, I guess it was God's will. Or it was like, gosh, we were praying for you as well and so forth, and we just don't know why God did this. And when they say those things, at the time, I didn't know how to respond because it was all new, obviously. And but when I look back on that, and again, like I said, my Christianity started to evolve, so I was a stronger Christian, and I realized they've never been through that. I can't judge them and say, how cruel are you to say that to me? I can't say that. I realized, well, they're going to eventually come to terms in their own lives, in their own situations. And when that happens, I will become that tool again to come alongside them and say, I know exactly how you feel. So I took the other approach, which was how am I going to help them in the future?
Whoa, because that is so easy, that moment to say, poor me, how dare you treat me like that, I don't want to talk to you again.
Right, exactly.
So, and that would have been really hard. Now, during that time, did you ever start doubting God, that He answered your prayers in such a different way than what you wanted?
Yeah. No, I never did, because, again, going back to the tour and so forth, I lost everything, and then yet God came through for me, and then there was other situations where that happened as well. And so He constantly did this throughout my entire life as a believer. So I knew that, okay, God, you took the biggest thing away from me, my life partner, and yet I know there's a bigger purpose. Again, I don't know, I don't see it, but I know at some point it's going to come to fruition.
Yeah, and it did, because you have so much more to your story that seems to me like insanity. So, and I want to get to that in just a moment. And that might be you right now that is really hurting and struggling, and that is having a really, really hard time. And I want you to know, you're not alone. There are so many people out there. And if people say things to you that don't seem right, they want to help, they want to care, and they just don't know what to say. So maybe you could do like Solomon did too, to try to help them in the process, which might become a helping moment for you. And you might feel like Jesus really doesn't care, or that he doesn't answer the prayer the way it should be answered at moment, and why things keep going wrong. But God, like Solomon, had such bigger picture, because the entire family got to know Jesus and got to be part of them, which was the biggest dream that I had been praying for and wanting all along. Sometimes it's hard circumstances that give people a wake-up call, even if it doesn't make sense to us. This is not the end for Solomon, though. Something even worse happened. And I want to tell you that after we are right back. At our Love Life Today events, we inspire, we encourage, and we help people with their needs. It's a great group of networking, building each other up, and bringing guests in and speakers in that are going to be there for you. We'd love for you to join us and to just see real people with real problems, real joys, embracing one another and building each other up. To connect with us and to get to know us better, go to barbtv.org or call us 855-515-5550. With me, Solomon Gee, and after he had a wonderful marriage with the love of his life for 23 years, his wife died. He saw God's answers in it, but yet it was hard. And then yet he knew it was time to move on. He had two beautiful boys and everything was all in place. So as he moved on in life, he remarries, and the worst of the worst happens and takes place, and she commits suicide. Did you know that every 12.8 minutes, someone commits suicide in the United States of America? Can you imagine all the people that stay behind, that are hurting? And how do you overcome something that seems to absolutely not be necessary? Solomon, you remarry in 2010. You're excited, you're starting over, everything is happening well. And then you get the most desperate moment only 3 months after. What happened?
Well, it was a call. The police tried to call me 3 a.m., but I usually sleep my cell phone off. So, and then it was a Sunday morning. And then at about 7:30 or so, my pastor calls me, and then he asked me, if I knew where my wife was. And then later on, he told me, he says, well, the police found her locked her in a car in a parking lot, and she had overdosed on the sleeping pills, and that was it.
Wow.
And she was gone.
So she was just gone, just like that.
Right. Yeah.
Now, what led up to that? You know, how did that start? Didn't you have a pretty big size argument right before that, or heavy duty discussion?
Well, it wasn't an argument. It was we were talking, we were arguing. We just didn't agree on one thing, and she'd taken off for the afternoon, and by then she had already met some people at our church, and so I figured, well, she was gonna cool down and just sleep at somebody's house and so forth. So I just left that alone. Yeah. And I figured time will will heal itself, and then that's the last I saw of her.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. It with the cancer, you saw it coming, I assume.
Right.
You saw, even if it was fast, you saw it coming. But this comes out of nowhere. Right. And then when you have a heated discussion before that, was there guilt? Was there struggle? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, initially it was like, gosh, did I do something?
Right,
was it something I said? But then when I think back on what we last talked about, I said, no, it was. No, I don't think it was that. Yeah, it was so trivial. And then she had 2 daughters, and her oldest daughter had just spoken to her the night before and saying, no, Mom says she really loves the marriage and so forth, so everything was fine. So even her daughter didn't even know this was about to happen. So nobody knew. So
do you think she literally overdosed?
Yeah, it was an overdose of that and a drug that for painkiller
combination.
Yeah.
So here you are. People see what has happened with your first wife. Now this is with your second wife, which you did nothing wrong.
Right.
What were the reactions?
Well, So the church that we were attending, it was a church I had been attending for, at that point, 10 years. Knew a lot of people. They knew me. It was really interesting because the people that I thought were my friends, suddenly they started walking on the other side of the aisle, or they just totally ignored me. And there was even one couple that we were this close, and they would just look right past me. Even I tried to start, a conversation with them, and so it was very hurtful. And I was confused. I didn't know how to handle that. So I went to my pastor and I explained all this, and he says, everybody has a way of grieving. And it's their way of grieving because they've also lost somebody too, So it's not just my loss, but theirs as well. And they just don't know how to process it. And so right now they're angry and they need to take it out on somebody. And unfortunately, it's you. And so, but then he says, but it's not your problem, because you didn't do anything to create this.
Yeah.
And so therefore, you don't need to feel guilty about any of this. Let them have their time and space. And, if they come back, that's great.
Now, how do you resolve that with God, Because, one blow, killer. 2 blows, how do you get back up? Because didn't your house foreclose during that time as well?
It was afterwards. It was afterwards, yes. What happened was I still refused to blame God. Because I said, all right. Because I know by now I've been a believer for about almost 30 years. And I said, okay, God, you brought me through things and got me out of it, and brought me through things and got me out of it. I figured, okay, what's my next adventure? It's almost like Mission Impossible. It's like you get this tape and says, should you accept your mission?
You're like, no.
Yeah.
Right.
Really, yeah. So it was, but I knew that God is going to always pull me through. I just don't understand it. When I start questioning God is when I get in trouble, because I just get in my own way.
So it never rocked your faith. It never took you away from God. What was His purpose in it? Did you ever see any plan in it looking back? Because now you have 4 kids to raise, and things are rocky. They're rough. So what do you think? Do you know the answer to that right now?
No, I don't know the answer to that. But luckily, her 2 girls were older, so they were already on their own.
Okay.
So I still had my boys to deal with.
Yeah.
But no, I just kind of started to move on.
Wow, that's good.
And some people looked at it being callous, because they said, "Gosh, how could you even, move on with 2 losses like this?"
Yeah.
And I always tell myself, well, if I created that problem, then yes, I would be guilty.
But you didn't.
But I didn't create the problem.
No.
So there's no reason to be guilty about it.
Wow.
I just need to just stay strong in God's faith. And I always pull back Job, the book of Job, and look at his life and so forth. And I said, yeah. I mean, he probably went through a lot worse than me. But I can imagine the losses that keep coming and keep coming.
Yeah. So during that time, was there a particular Bible passage that really helped you to overcome?
Oh my gosh, there was quite a bit. But I always go back to my life verse, which is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. That trust in the Lord with all your heart, not some, but all your heart, and lean on your own understanding. And that's what I did. I don't want to try to figure it out for myself. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths.
Wow.
And I've always acknowledged God because I know He's going to steer me somewhere. I don't know
Even
where.
in the hard circumstances. Now, you wrote a book.
Yes.
Can you tell me just quickly, what's your book about?
Well, the book's called Every Day Passes is One Day
Do you
Closer.
have it?
I do, actually. This right here.
Okay.
And there it is. And I'd like to give one to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I'd love to have that. So, every day passes is one day closer to what?
To wherever it is. So that phrase came up because my son, he was 10 at the time, and he was just having a hard time sleeping, and so he was crying, missing his mom. And I went in there, sorry.
It's okay.
I went in there and I was talking to him, and and he said, "I want to see mommy." I said, "We all will one day." And then somehow this thing came up. I said, "Well, think about it this way. Every day that passes is one day closer to seeing her again." And somehow that phrase just kind of stuck, And so as I was writing the book, I said, what should I call this book? And then all of a sudden God reminded me of that phrase, and that's how it came to the book.
Wow, thank you. Solomon, we are completely out of time. If there is any way, I've heard great things about your book. People start reading it and they're so touched they actually won't put it down, which is terrible because they lose sleep over you. but anyways, if they want to get a hold of this book, where can they go?
They can go to Amazon. It's on there, Amazon.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm what was just mentioned was Solomon said something about Job. Who is Job? Job is a guy that lost everything. His children were taken from him. All his fortune, and he was a rich guy, were taken from him. Everything was taken from him, and he even ended up very, very sick. And Satan did anything he could to stop Job from loving God. And for some reason, God allowed it at the time. And there is one point that even when his wife tells him, "Why don't you just curse God and die?" and his friends say it's his fault and that he sinned and that's why everything is going wrong in his life, that at the end of all of this, in a period of time, that Job is just at the end of the rope. And that is when God responds to Job. And I would expect it to be pity, feeling sorry, and connecting. But that is not God. This is how God responded to Job. It's in Job 38, verse 1. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, "Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now gird up your loins like a man, and I will ask you, and you instruct me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth?" And sentence after sentence after sentence says, "Where were you when I did this and this and this?" And then when you go all the way to the end, you start realizing God is in charge and has such much a bigger plan, even if it does not make any sense to us. And then to top it all at the end with Job, his friends were the ones that really were not there for him and pretty much dumped him and just bashed him. And then all the way at the end, let me find it real quick for you. It says it right, let me find that for you, 42:10. Something that Job did that would really, something you would say, no way. But the friends blow it, and they are going to Job for him to pray. And Job prayed, even if he wasn't treated right. And it says, the Lord restored the fortunes of Job. When he prayed for his friends, he forgave. And the Lord increased all that Job had twofold. When you're struggling with things, there's hope for you. There was hope for Solomon, and there was hope for Job. It doesn't make sense, it doesn't seem fair, it doesn't seem right. But God has a bigger plan, and that includes you. Call us, 855-515-5550, or connect with us at barbtv.org. We want to pray with you, we want to hear your story, and we want you to know God loves you, and so do I. Have a great day.